M. Lynn Benyon, superintendent of public schools in Utah Valley, said, "It is doubtful that there is an organization in existence that more fully invests in the educational development of its people." Members of the Church of Jesus Christ are pioneers in education, and that's something you can share with your friends. Only 3 years after the founding of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Joseph Smith opened the School of the Prophets, one of the very first schools for adults in our entire country. Both men and women came and learned languages, learned about education, history, and about God and His plan for us. Joseph Smith and Brigham Young were pioneers in higher education. Just 3 months after arriving in the Salt Lake Valley, Brigham Young started a school. And just 7 months after arriving in the valley, he started the University of Deseret. Brad Wilcox, in an address that he gave to Ensign College, spoke of, he was at a class at the University of Wyoming, and it was on the history of education. And the teacher was pointing out all of the different schools that existed prior in higher education, universities that existed prior to the Civil War. Everything was east of the Mississippi until somebody pointed out, "What's that west of the Mississippi?" And he was scratching on this overhead transparency, which is what we had before document cameras and PowerPoint presentations. He was trying to scratch it off, and Brad Wilcox said, "No, don't scratch that off. That was the University of Deseret, one of the very first universities in our country." So in October of 2021, Brad Wilcox gave an amazing address to the students of Ensign College that will be in the description below, so you can click right to it. But in that address, he encouraged all of the students there to pursue as much learning as they can. He said this, "Interestingly, church members are very unique because worldwide, in every denomination, as people get more education, secular education, they typically become less faithful religiously, publicly going to church meetings and privately saying their prayers." You've seen that all around you, and I think we've all seen that as people learn a lot, tend to forget about Heavenly Father. But that is not the case in our church, he says. We are the only church in which the opposite is true. As people gain more education, they actually become more faithful in their public and private religiosity. He then says, "Our fear is not that people will find out something that will pull them away from the faith. We don't fear that you're going to learn something or study something that's going to hurt your testimony. The fear that we have is that you won't study deeply enough, because we are sure that as we study deeply enough, there's nothing that you could ever learn that's going to pull you from the faith. It will only deepen your faith." I know a lot of people say, "Oh, he learned too much about church history and he left the church." I always say he didn't learn enough about church history, because as you do, you become sympathetic to the early church members, and you think about your own life and how they were truly amazing men and women in those days. As we learn more about secular knowledge in universities, we gain a deeper knowledge and faith in our Heavenly Father. And that typically doesn't happen anywhere else. And that's something you can share with your friends.